Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is 6 o'clock by the Town Hall clock. Welcome to our Cabinet meeting this afternoon. The first item on the agenda is the evacuation procedure, because I don't recognise everybody in the room. Forgive me if I read it for anyone who hasn't seen it. A fire drill is not expected, so if the alarm sounds, please evacuate the building quickly and calmly. Please use the stairs and do not use the lifts. Once out of the building, please gather outside the Yorkshire Bank on the opposite side of the road. Exit by the door which you entered the room, or the fire exits which are clearly located, so it's just through that door there. Please also make sure all mobile phones are turned off or set to silent, and I would also advise that part or all of this meeting will be recorded for future broadcast. Okay. Any issues with that, there are officers sat around the table who will assist if in the unlikely event that we do have a fire. Apologies for absence, everyone is here. Declarations of interest, are there any additional ones to those printed on the papers?
No, Chair.
Okay. Item 4 is to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 5th of February. They were sent not that long ago. Are members happy to accept those minutes?
No, Chair.
Okay. Sign. Item 5 is public consultation. I do have speakers on items 6, 7 and 9. I think in light of that I'm going to take the agenda in the order it is. Okay. I have on item 6 Councillor Condarca and Mrs Condarca. Item 7 Councillor Condarca and Mrs Condarca. And item 9 Councillor Condarca and Mrs Condarca. I've not been advised of any further speakers. Public consultation then, so we go straight to item 6, the General Fund budget, which you will find on page 9 of the report. This report presents the final General Fund revenue budget and capital programme for 1920-21 to Cabinet for approval. Section 3 of the report updates Cabinet on the forecast outturn for the General Fund for the current year, which is a forecast deficit of £220,000. There has been a significant spend pressure due to increased demand for temporary accommodation in year, along with increased costs of recycling. This has been partly offset by additional income from green waste. Section 4 sets out the background to the budget process and key messages from the local government finance supplement. Section 5.1 confirms a proposed council tax increase of £5 for 2021, increasing the Band D charge to £238.66 per annum, although many households will pay less than this, as over 80% of properties in the borough are in bands A to C. The annual increase for a Band A property will be £3.33 per year. Section 5 outlines the current revenue budget proposals for 2021, and the table at 5.7 sets out the changes to budget since the draft budget was presented to Cabinet in November. The current position presented to Cabinet is a surplus of £169,000 after the two growth items at section 5.9 have been taken into account. The capital programme for both current year and 2021 is included at section 6 and appendix E, but I will be making some amendments to that later. As part of the annual budget setting process, the Section 151 officer is required to review the level of reserves that the authority holds and confirms that they are at a prudent level. The table at Section 7.3 summarises the reserves that the authority is expected to hold over the next 3 years. and section 7.11 and 7.12 highlight the key points from the draft SIPFA Financial Resilience Index. Section 8 discusses the Council's medium-term financial position and the considerable uncertainty that the Council faces over the next 12 months due to the delayed spending review, fair funding review and the move to 75% business rates retention. The particular concern here is the full reset of business rates expected to take place from 2021, April. The table at 8.3 shows a potential deficit in the region of £800,000 by 2023. A risk assessment is included at section 9 and the section 151 assurance statement on reserves and budget proposals is set out at section 10. This confirms that the estimates included in the budget are robust and levels of reserves are adequate. I do, though, before bringing public speakers in, wish to move the following amendments. At 2.6, that the general fund budget be agreed and submitted to Council with the following amendments. That an additional revenue contribution to capital of £100,000 be approved. That this be used to fund a capital programme allocation of £100,000 in 2021 to be used on the transforming Bedworth initiatives. No hollow vision, a vision backed by money. That an additional growth item of £50,000 be approved to provide further support to the leisure feasibility programme. Again, we have high aspirations and we are backing these in monetary terms. That the revised surplus resources of 18,604 be added to the general fund balances to support the savings programme in future years, as this is prudent. And that it be noted that the section 151 assurance statement does not require any changes as a result of the amendments above. And to amend 2.7, that the capital programme for 2020 and 2021 be increased by £100,000 to include the additional allocation of £100,000 for transforming Bedworth, and that the revised programme of 19.736 million be recommended to Council for approval. And amended tables for Appendix D and E will reflect this. I do then have speakers. Item 6, Councillor Conn.
Thank you very much, Chair. I was surprised to see on social media comments from one of the Tory councillors about the government giving this council £700,000 extra this year. I actually had a look at what that figure came from, and it's this strange idea of how much we've got in terms of spending power. Behind that, I actually found out that the council tax rise is £300,000 and the new homes bonus is £300,000. So the actual government is only giving us £100,000 extra spending power, whilst loading onto this council all sorts of new requirements in terms of the homeless, etc. So I would like you to confirm, actually, you haven't got a free £700,000 from the government. On other matters, it's great we're doing this plan and putting money into Bedworth, etc. But I do hope we do a reality check, because people too tend to get carried away with these grand visions, and it's important that we don't spend a lot of money on consultants without first being absolutely sure how fast Bedworth will grow, what houses we'll get, and not actually have another climbing wall situation where we think, oh, it's going to be marvellous, we're going to have 170 million there, just silly numbers. I do hope we do a reality check before we get the consultants in to do this work on Bedworth, because it's important to get something built in Bedworth Town Centre and a regeneration project that happens, rather than spending a vast sum of money on something that is a dream that will never happen. So I do ask you to do that reality check. Also, I do caution that the NABCEL income is always very vulnerable. As we grow NABCEL, it becomes less profitable. Inherently, we then start to employ staff. We've lost the low-hanging fruit. There's always easy ways of making money from NABCEL, which we've used up. So I do hope we apply caution in the future. And two things I'd like to look at spending money on. Obviously, we need to spend money on climate change, which actually will be a spend to save, because there's lots of things where we waste energy and we could spend on radiator valves, more efficient vehicles, etc. And also, as I mentioned at the last Cabinet meeting, we really do need to look at getting empty homes back into use, because that gives us an income stream, because we get new homes bonuses for empty houses being back into use, and helps with our housing pressures. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any points of clarification? Can I thank you for your comments, Councillor Condarker? We then have Mrs Condarker.
Thank you. There were just a few bits that I wanted to sort of pull out and just sort of comment on, really. One was about the vacancies, savings and what have you. I noticed on Facebook that the council has sort of put a link, and they've got basically there are 20 jobs that are being advertised on the West Midlands jobs currently and things, which seemed an awful lot to me. So I don't know sort of how that is taken into account, because if you can't fill these jobs that are really needed, do you have to pay a bit more in order to get the right people, or are there ways of doing apprenticeships and things to actually build people through the system, because not everyone's got all the qualifications and things that you actually want. The reduction in rental income from 22 Queen's Road, if I'm not mistaken, that's what was Woolies and has had various guises. Have we at any point had a piece of paper that says the lessons that have been learnt? Because there don't seem to have been lessons learnt as far as I can see. With family who are in that line of business, they nearly fell off their chair when I said that the council had bought that way back when it happened and things, because it is such a difficult area to actually make money on. Keith's touched on it, 50,000 for the leisure feasibility just for consultancy. We need to watch very carefully how much is actually spent on consultants. HS2 has been in the news an awful lot the last couple of days, and I've read an awful lot about that over the years, and the consultants seem to be the only ones that are actually making any money out of it. So, Civic Hall restructure, great, should have been done a long time. It hasn't been given value for money for ages. Page 34, it says there's a further vacancy is currently predicted in economic development, and that is somewhere where we really need to be having full staff. It's one of the things, like Kate said, sometimes you have to spend money to save money or to create money, and that is really quite an important one. And it's also a bit concerning, this overspend in sports development due to £72,000 of invoices from Eton Sports Centre. We actually need someone whose part of their job is to check these things. That should never have been allowed to happen. Increased wheel bin purchases. I thought that the charge was being put onto developers. I know there will always be a few that need replacing and things, but that still seemed an awful lot of money. £7,000 additional costs on the mayor's car, I don't think can be justified whatsoever in this day and age. And finally, the borough elections for next year. That's put in as amount for next year. Surely we know that every 4 years we're going to have elections, if not some by-elections in between. So surely an amount should be put aside each year, because that's totally predictable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any points of clarification? Can I thank you very much for your comments? That concludes our public speaking. Are there any comments members wish to make? Councillor.
A couple of comments. Obviously, the 100k for transforming Bedworth, absolutely brilliant. I think that's fantastic. It needs that shot to actually progress it. It's not always consultants that we're looking at. When you talk about knowing what that's what we want to move forward with rather than wasting 100k. There's a consultation that's going on at the moment, and that consultation, which is on the back of the sports and playing pitch strategy, is the transforming of Bedworth, as well as transforming of Nuneaton. They're both on the consultation, so we're taking on board that already, and we are consulting to see what each area wants to do in whether it be the sports and playing pitch strategy, whether it be transforming Nuneaton or Bedworth Town Centre. So those questions are being asked over the next 4 weeks, and in fact the transforming of Bedworth has actually been extended through that process for another 4 weeks, and people have that opportunity to feed into that consultation. The one thing I did say to officers on the consultation, I wanted to make sure that everybody had the opportunity, or had the opportunity to see there was a consultation going on. That is happening. I see it all over social media. I see it at the clubs. We see it at going on in the press. So it's, you know, people are getting to know that there's a consultation going on. So that information on Bedworth Town Centre, on Nuneaton Town Centre, on the sports strategy, our park strategies, all that information is coming through and will be compiled. So it will direct us on how, what direction we're moving to spend the 100k that's going into Bedworth, the 50k that's going into the sports strategy. The over £1 million already been put into the sports strategy to move the projects on to the next stage. So all that is going on, and obviously we're asking people what they think. So it is happening. It's going through at the moment. So, you know, I look forward to seeing what the outcomes are going to be on those, and how we move forward with our 2 town centres and our parks and sporting facilities across this borough.
Thank you. Any further comments?
I'd like to say, Chair, basically that I fully endorse the recommendations that were made. I'd like to thank fellow Labour councillors and also officers that have worked all year on producing this budget. In 2010, the Tory administration were able to have a budget of 21,800,000. We are now working with a budget of 15,500,000. We have had 6 years of austerity, of cuts, where we've had to try and maintain services. And yet, everyone sort of criticises this council and the way it's run. We run an effective economic council. Other people might put things out on Facebook, some false news, etc., etc. But we're here doing this day in and day out for residents of this borough. I fully endorse the recommendations and look forward to full council on Monday.
Okay. I think, yes, we do have a budget setting meeting on Monday evening, when I'm sure a lot more will be said. But I do want to come back on a couple of things raised by our speakers tonight. Climate change is vitally important. It's so important that we address this, that we have set up a climate change working party that hopefully will report back in due course with recommendations. I think it's at that point that we need to consider the finances attached to that. Another comment was made about whether we actually employ apprentices or actually grow our own talent in effect. That is something we do have historic evidence of doing and has been very successful. It's a well-made point and one that I hope we will always look to. In terms of HS2, forgive me, I've not had any involvement to my knowledge in their consultancy costs or anything else. In regard to elections, actually we have elections scheduled as a borough council every other year because we elect by halves, not once every 4 years. We do then have other elections, general elections, county elections, etc. And we need to obviously appropriately fund those. So there is knowledge of when elections are scheduled, but with the number of elections we've had over the last couple of years, I'm sure we'd all appreciate that forecasting that is not as easy as it may have been. And in terms of economic development, yes, it's a vitally important issue, which is why we're really pleased that we've been able to use one of our senior directors, Dawn Dawson, in a role to sort of try and make sure that we do not take our foot off the gas, so to speak, if that's not an inappropriate comment. I'm sure a lot more will be said in regard to budget. So I will move the recommendations as printed with the amendments that I have proposed. Is that seconded?
I'll second that, Chair.
And is that agreed?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. And thank you to our speakers. We do try to take on board comments made.
Yeah.
Item 7 then is the Housing Revenue Budget and Capital Programme. Chris?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This report sets out the revenue and capital budgets for the housing revenue account for 2020-2021, along with forecast outturn for 2019-20. Forecast outturn for the current year is forecast deficit at 5.88 million against budgeted deficit of 4.86 million. Details are shown in section 3. The Cabinet are also requested to approve the payment of 400,000 from earmarked rent reserves to fund the additional costs within the independent living services for fire risk surveys and security costs. The draft HRA budget for 2020-21 is shown at section 4 and appendix A and is a deficit of 288k. The deficit is after additional funding into the capital programme of 1.79 million to fund the ongoing new build and acquisition programme. The HRA budget is based on a number of assumptions as outlined in paragraph 4.8, which includes a rent increase of 2.7 in line with an updated government policy. This is after a 4-year period of rents being reduced by at least 1% each year. A number of the other changes are included in the draft budget and are shown in section 4.12, including a proposed 2.7 increase in garage rents, homeless hostel charges and other fees and charges. The HRA continues to face a number of other significant challenges, notably from increased levels of right to buy, sales which reduces our stock and future income generation, plus the recent government announcement of an increase in borrowing rates from Public Works Loan Board, which has required an extensive review of the business plan. Section 5 on the report outlines the HRA capital, which totals 26.3 million, thus ensuring that the planned improvements to tenants' homes continue along with the ongoing investment in acquisition and new build homes to partly mitigate the reduction in stock from the right to buy sales. Full details of the proposed capital programme are included in Appendix C of the report. A full review of risks facing the HRA along with the necessary total reserves cover of 1.3 million is included in section 6. This is additional to the minimum working balance of 1.3 million. This means that the HRA must have a total reserve balance of 2.6 million to ensure it can mitigate the significant risk it faces. The HRA business plan has been updated with details shown in section 7 of the report. A summary of the business plan showing graphically at Appendix B and demonstrates the HRA is viable over a full 30-year term, but will be kept under review. The recommendations are shown at section 2 of the report, but it should be noted that the recommendation of 2.6 should make reference to paragraph 4.12 of the report and not 4.11 as publicised on the agenda. That's all I have to say. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. Councillor Condar.
Thanks very much, Chair. My residents at Carisbrook really found the cladding work done there really good. I think you went to see it when you were a housing cabinet member. So I'm really pleased we're carrying on with that programme. And for all the things we moan about, some of the stuff the housing does is really good and has a really big beneficial effect, both for climate change, people's energy costs, etc. So I hope we really do get the cladding done. And also at the same time, I will mention we have a lot of opportunity with those buildings to add solar to the roofs. If we are actually putting scaffolding up and doing the cladding, we should look and see if there's any opportunity to get a partner in to actually use the roof space for cladding, because solar. Because quite often those partners need a roof space and actually will fund the solar from the electric they generate. Less good is this continuous uncertainty over the warden's stay put advice, all the things changing in 3.4. It says there only some of the independent living schemes have changed advice. I'm still waiting for a briefing note on that, but I don't want a £500,000 spending pressure to appoint security guards. I want a permanent solution that is actually safe and effective and has a lot of other benefits. It is something we need to work on. It may be we need to ask someone else, like the County Council, for improved funding, or we may need to look at who stays in which blocks, if there are people who are actually not... I mean, some of the people staying in some of these sheltered housing complexes are really needing high levels of care, and we should possibly be looking at actually whether they're in the most suitable place, if that actually then is better for them and better for us. So I don't want this to be swept under the carpet. I'd like to actually have a proper look at what's going on with these independent living schemes to see how we can save the council money, make the place more secure in terms of what we're doing, and if we do need to move things around, what we need to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any points of clarification? Thank you. Mrs. Condacourt.
Thank you. Keith actually covered a little bit of what I was going to say. That it's very unclear sort of what the timeline is for this. I mean, obviously it's asking for 500,000 this year, but it doesn't. There's no indication as to whether this is going to be a year-on-year thing, and it'd be crazy to have it as such. It'd be far better off paying wardens to actually live there, so that someone's on site. So that really does need a lot of clarification. Because I had someone ask me about it, because she said, well, my mother's in sheltered accommodation in Barkington and I know nothing about this. Or, how do we know why some have got it and some haven't? So there needs to be a lot of clarification about that. The other thing I wanted to just ask, I mean, when I saw it says homeless hostel rents to be increased by 2.7% in line with general dwellings rent increase, my brain sort of said, that seems a bit steep, because as far as I'm aware, the homeless people are usually homeless because they haven't been able to pay their rents, blah, 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 things. In 4.12 on page 52, referring to this increase, it says this will raise the nightly charge by, I presume that is 95p, not 0.95p, because 0.95p is only like less than a penny. So I assume that actually should be 0.95 pounds, which is 95p. So that is actually £6.35 a week. So that seems quite a big thing. I mean, I don't know enough about the whole system as to how many of them can claim it back and what have you and things, but my brain is telling me that we might not get all that money, that people just won't be able to to pay it. The other thing was at 3.3, it's just very disappointing that the council end up losing money through no fault of their own, because the DWP has this strange thing about not allowing 53 Mondays in one financial year, and you know, that is just a really poor thing from the government, I've got to say. I think that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any points of clarification? Thank you for your votes. Anything you want to come back on, please?
No, not really, Chair. I'd just like to. I'm really pleased that this is where it is. I'm more than happy with what the team are doing and putting the security guards where they've needed to do until we find out what we've got to do. So I'm happy with everything that's going ahead and everything that the team's doing. So I'll just remove the recommendation.
Yeah, just a couple of things. The first thing I'm going to shout about is the window and doors programme. I haven't said anything to Councillor Watkins or any of the officers, but having looked at the ones that are gone in on Queen Elizabeth Road in Camp Hill, it's really made a difference to those properties, certainly the ones in the blocks of flats. So continuing of that, improving our properties with those window doors at windows is absolutely fantastic. And equally, some of the properties that I've seen around the borough that have had the home insulation, the exterior insulation, that's absolutely transformed those properties as well. On the budget papers, I just want to make one point, and it is a political point. A number of years ago, we was asked to do this budget meeting a week or some days before the actual full council meeting. We used to, if you remember, do it just before the budget setting meeting of full council. We took that on board, and we show our budget now well over a week before the full council meeting. And it's a shame that we give opportunity to scrutinise that budget over a number of weeks, and it's a shame that the opposition, the Conservatives, can't show their budget a few weeks before in the same way. Because at the end of the day, we had a situation only at the last full council meeting, the last budget setting meeting, which is full council, annual council last year, where they presented a budget that was illegal and had to change it.
That's defamatory, sorry.
I didn't interrupt you. Oh, you didn't speak. It was illegal, and we had to adjourn the meeting so they could go away and have aspirations to get that budget through. So it would be nice to actually be in the same situation where the Conservatives show their budget a few weeks before it was done, which they haven't done for 2 years running now. So I do feel, that we do need to scrutinise their budget in the same way they're allowed to scrutinise our budget. And obviously last year's meeting proved that point, as we wouldn't have had the long adjournments, so they could get their budget together. So hopefully the Conservative group will take that on board and in future years show their hand. Thank you. Thank you. Jim.
Any further comments?
I'm quite happy to accept the recommendations. I am really pleased with the aims of this council and its properties under the Decent Homes project, where we maintain high standards and respond to tenant requirements. The central heating upgrade has already been mentioned before. This is the continuation of an increased investment to accelerate the number of homes with efficient, cost-effective heating systems. project of district heating boilers regarding our district heating schemes require replacement in line with dwelling boiler upgrades. This is ongoing. All the fire safety works that have already been mentioned. Of course, the new building acquisitions, as a council, we are being very proactive in the fact that we plan to build more council houses because we do lose, through right to buy, around 50 houses per year. And then again, as Councillor Condicor mentioned, the structural and cladding, so they're more affordable to heat and contribute to the reduction of carbon emissions. So there are a lot of things that we do as a council for our housing tenants. So move the recommendations, Chair.
Thank you. I'd just like to come back. I think Monday night is obviously the night when there will be major discussion, I'm sure, on the budgets that the council proposes. But actually, one of these speakers mentioned the increase in homeless hostel rents. I would just point out that a large proportion of tenants actually are able to claim housing benefit or universal credit. So the impact of that on a large proportion of our tenants is not as great as perhaps seems at first sight. I'd like to actually say to Councillor Watkins, I hope he will pass on the thanks of Cabinet to his team of officers, because very similarly to Councillor Lloyd, I was out and about in my own patch today seeing some of the significant improvements in our housing stock, and that doesn't happen overnight. That takes a lot of planning, a lot of work by officers, and I hope he will take back Cabinet's appreciation for the hard work going on. And I'd like to conclude by saying actually I should have thanked finance officers under the last report, but it is equally appropriate that I thank finance officers for their assistance as we put budgets together, because without that professional advice, we are not, as elected members, able to do our job. So I hope that the finance people present will send back our appreciation. I'm sure it's not just to myself, I'm sure that all members of the council would echo that sincere thanks. We do value greatly their advice. We have a proposal that has been, I think, moved by Councillor Watkins, seconded by Councillor Phillips. Are we all happy with those proposals?
Yes, Chair.
Yep. Thank you. We're then moving over to the agenda that was sent out a little later. It's almost like a second agenda with the items that were to follow. Item 8 is the Treasury Strategy and Budgetary Framework. I do have this report somewhere. I want to move the recommendations here. Let me just get an appropriate piece of paper in front of me. The recommendations are printed at section 2 of the report, but in light of the amendments I made at item 6, I would like to move the following amendments. So 2.1, the proposed Treasury Strategy and Budgetary Framework 2020-2021, as amended, be agreed and submitted to full council for approval, including Treasury Strategy, Treasury and Prudential Indicators, MRP policy statement, the capital strategy and capital reserves allocations. Following the recommendation as part of the General Fund Budget Report to include an additional £100,000 capital project for transforming Bedworth, a number of tables and indicators require revision from those published in the agenda. The following paragraphs and tables provided and updated information with an updated Appendix B and an updated Appendix H, Treasury Strategy and Budgetary Framework, appended to this paper. All other indicators remain unchanged. Capital expenditure, this prudential indicator is a summary of the Council's capital expenditure plans, both those agreed previously and those forming part of this budget cycle. Members are asked to approve the capital expenditure forecast, which includes the latest bullet reprofiling estimates in 2020, 21, 21 for schemes slipping from the previous year. Pardon? Right, okay. We are then, we have speakers on this now. We have Councillor. Oh, no speakers. Sorry, I do apologise. I thought there was a speaker on item 8. So I am happy to move the recommendations with the amendments as proposed. Is that good?
Second, yeah.
And is that agreed?
Agreed, yeah.
Okay. We are coming now to item 9, which we do have public speakers on. Item 9 is actually, will be a recommendation to Cabinet that we approve the timetable of meetings. I believe this has been circulated to leaders of the groups as well. I actually want to move what I feel is a very sensible minor amendment, and I'll do that now. And that is that following council meetings, there are some council meetings that the following evening there is an overview and scrutiny meeting. And I think in light of the fact that some of our council meetings have been a little longer than perhaps historically they have been, it would be prudent if we were to slip the overview and scrutiny panels back a week or so to give, I think, a good work-life balance, not just to elected members, but actually to officers of this council as well. I don't see anything controversial in that. I just think it's about work-life balance. And I would ask that prior to the council meeting, we get an updated suggestions. So that would be a minor amendment to the recommendations as printed. Councillor Conduct.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm pleased that a suggestion of mine for years and years that we actually cut the number of planning meetings by 1 over a year has been taken up. Because we always had over Christmas a crazy little crash of planning meetings with very little on the agenda because the council basically shuts down for 2 weeks, but we then have a planning meeting with just one item on the agenda and a 2-week gap of things. So taking one planning meeting out of the annual cycle is a very positive step. I've noticed a lot of the external scrutiny meetings, external people having difficulty getting to the meetings, and I know from my time when I was a group leader that the people on scrutiny, some people have commitments and can't get back to here for 5 o'clock. I understand we need internal scrutiny at 5 so we don't keep our staff on longer than need be, but I wondered whether it'd be wise to have external scrutiny at say 5:30 so that actually members who didn't mind which scrutiny panel they went on could go external if they had a work commitment that couldn't mean they got here so quickly, and it would also give external speakers a better time to get here, because at 5 o'clock a number of people who are supposed to come and present health matters or whatever have been struggling to get here. So there are a couple of things hopefully take on board. Also, this is a really important document and it's never easy to find on the council's website. When you go on the council's website, if you want to see what meetings are happening, you go on the agenda, the meetings, and it only shows you meetings that have happened. So tomorrow, this meeting will be on the front page of the council's meetings and agendas page, but today it's not. So in order to find out what meetings are happening at the council meetings, you have to know what meeting is happening to then go down and look in cabinet, etc. So if it's not too hard, it'd be useful to have the cadre meetings more prominent in the committee meetings page, and also change the website so that today's meetings are always shown on the short list of recent meetings. So it should be recent meetings and today's, so you don't then have to find and go all through the menus and know what meeting is happening today, if you get that point. Thank you.
Thank you for the comments. Any points of clarification? Thank you. Mrs. Conduct.
You can tell that Keith and I haven't seen each other today to discuss what we were going to say. It was just really one thing I picked up. Yeah, with the planning, it seems to be all over the place. There's places where there's a 4-week gap. There's several places where there's only a 2-week gap. And I understand the 5-week gap between December and January because of the Christmas break. But the other ones didn't tie into bank holidays or anything like that. So I think those dates actually need to be checked before a definitive timetable goes out, because I'm not sure that it's deliberate. I think it's accidental errors. I've got the where there's shorter or longer gaps if whoever needs to do that, but I won't read them all out. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And some clarification, Mrs. Conway. Thank you for your comments. I'd just like to say, I think putting together a timetable of meetings is an incredibly difficult job, actually. And I do thank our committee section for trying to do this job. It can be quite time consuming. I'm unsure of how, I've never had a problem online, I have to say, finding meetings. I'm not quite sure what that comment is, but obviously I'll look at that again. But I have to say I've never found a difficulty finding agendas or meeting dates.
Can I just add to that? If you are a member of the public, it is up, and you haven't actually got, we've got one of these print hanging on our notice board, so we know when the meetings are, so you can go easily onto it. If you're a member of the public that hasn't got that timetable, it is really difficult. You want to know when the next cabinet is, and you go to cabinet.
I hear the point, and I trust you will agree. I've allowed you to speak really outside of the protocol. Your point's taken on board. I think we will look at that issue. I have to say, generally, if you're interested, you can usually I click on cabinet and you can see what the meetings are. You can click on planning and likewise. But I will ask officers to look at that if we can actually make it clearer, because we very much want to be an open and transparent council. That's very important to us. So if we can address that issue, we will certainly endeavour to do so. Are there any other comments? Members wish to say. Councillor Shepherd.
If I can just endorse your comments about work-life balance, I think this is important for the officers of this council to not have too long the meetings and have them to come in the next day possibly for scrutiny meetings that could actually be another 4 or 5 hours on. So I think certainly in terms of life balance, I would support that recommendation.
And these are indicative timetables because they allow everybody the opportunity to plan their diaries appropriately. But occasionally, chairs of particular committees will have to make decisions about altering timings of meetings or whatever else. They are indicative, and I'm sure if there are difficulties getting certain external people to meetings, we can always put them on the end of agendas, but that's something that I'm sure chairs of committees will look at throughout the year. The recommendations are printed. We've made a slight amendment in regard to trying to work out how we can have a bigger gap between council and OSP meetings. Are they agreed?
Chair, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. We then have recommendations from overview and scrutiny panels. We dealt with some of these at the last meeting. There are no further ones at this meeting, and we have no any other items. Can I thank officers of the council and members of the public and elected members for your time this evening. Thank you. Safe journey home.